Gonna be putting these, doing doors and windows on this. Gonna be putting doors on first. I will not be putting the skins on right now. We'll put door frames on, we'll get them fit, show you all the ways of doing that. And then we'll move on to doing windows, and then we'll fit the door skins. But we know we have a lot of questions on installing these, so I'm gonna do a nice video on how to install them. So we'll start from the front and work our way back. I'll show it here. Already did some of the holes that are already pre-drilled into the chassis. So this hole just opened up. Put a rip nut here, here. You're gonna be putting one here, and you'll be dispersing them also along here. And then I've also got the door shock mounts if you're getting those. I already have those installed on here in the show. Basically, you just open up in here, clean it out, make sure that you have enough room for the door shock to fit and just swing. You can test fit it, pop it out every so often. Alright, so we got our hinges here, quarter rods, door shocks. We're going to wait to put these on until everything's fit and lined up properly, just so we're not fighting those. This is also important to have. I like doing this beforehand because you're going to be putting that quarter rod there and it screws in there. Same thing with this one. You're going to be running that quarter rod in, so it's nice to have this now so that you can just line it up, tighten it down. And you take these out first. You're also going to take the latches out of these, out of the factory ones. You'll take those latches out so they will bolt up to our door frames. You're going to have to adjust them, so we're already way too close. Just twist them out. Try to keep them even. Reason being is if you go really far out on the bottom one and really far on the top one, that's going to change your angle of swing. So when you have the doors lined up and you change that swing, that plexiglass is going to catch on to the other side. So you try to keep everything as straight as possible. Okay, I'm not going to worry about the top one right now. I just want to get a good eyeball of how close we are. So it's about 1/8 inch right in between there. You're also going to want to make sure that this is lined up across top there. So if I lift this up here, looks like we got a pretty big gap still. So we'll go forward a little more. Twist that out. A few turns. Say that looks pretty good. Also, make sure that you tighten these down. I've had a lot of people forget to tighten these down. That makes the door shake around a little bit. Make sure your turns are pretty even. Also, you're going to want to trim out here too. What I like to do is I'll just cut from that circle, this oval shape that's already in here from the factory. I'll just basically get the farthest outside edge and just cut up, and then I'll cut out. And I'll take away a little bit here too. Basically try to keep everything symmetrical and lines up nicely. Put these, just thread these in. We got our quarter rods here. These are the rears, the flag facing sideways. These are the uppers, flag facing up. So we have these slots here, so you don't necessarily have to pull the screws out. You can squeeze it in there and get them to lock in. Make your life a lot easier, like so. Just start those. You can fit that in there, and then you got that hole right there. You can just use your bolts that we give you. Use the 1/2 inch ones, or you can use the 3/8. Just to hold that in place while you do this. You're not fighting it. So this is where your latch might be nice to put on now. So now you can have that latch click in there and hold in place. You're also going to need to adjust how far in and out it is. I'll change this. You got this side already. We'll mountain up. So I'm going to drill these out, put them in a vise. I'll just do all 4 just to get them done. So we're not going to cinch it down because it's going to need to be adjusted. So we're just going to get it kind of snug so we can still shift it around. And then we'll line it up and then we'll unlock the door. Oh yeah. So here's another thing. I think we've talked about this before in our videos, but driver to passenger side, I believe driver's side you might need to go up, passenger side you might need to go down. But you see how high this is? We want that down. Even though we're going to shift it forward, we want this down a little bit. So what I'll do is I'll get a mallet and I'll smack this down a little bit to bring the whole door down. Because we can only adjust from here, we can only adjust in and out. And also I need to come forward more for sure. Move this out of the way just so we're not smacking it. That's better. This is flop around a little bit, so it actually might be good. Right there. So then we can figure it out, tightening that. So what I like to do for that is I will use, I'll lift it over here, so I don't have to pull it off, open it to do it. Put it on tighten this up a little bit. You don't want your door hitting the frame and try to avoid that as much as possible. So you want to find a good medium for that. That looks good right there. I'll tighten. So now we'll tighten this down. That looks pretty good right there. So space away from the door a little bit. Also good. You want to be a little bit behind, because once you put that door skin in there, it'll fill in that hangover you got right there. So now we'll put this latch back in. These also have slots here, so you can adjust it like this. You're going in for adjustment. Like I said before, make sure that your holes are pretty parallel. So this hole, we basically want the center of these holes. We got both sides fit. We are transitioning to a new style pull pin, so there'll be an angle on these just for clearance for these. We've had some problems with some clearance issues. If the door shifted back, the pin hits there, so we've put an angle on these. I don't have a problem with these clearing on this cage, so we're good. But just take note that you will have shaved sides on these, or we are transitioning to all of these being the same with the shaved backside. For right now, while I'm making this video for the time being, you'll be getting one of these, and then you'll be getting one of these with a angle cut on them. Those ones with the angle cut on the backside are for the rear doors. If it's like this, where there's a corner up top, that is for the fronts. But I'm able to use these. Just trying to burn these up right now. Supposed to be going there. For our levers, you'll be getting a little U-bolt that will be clamping the top side of it for the pull pins. I will be using a clamp, steel cable clamp, for installing on here. Reason being is because we give those to you guys because not everybody has a clamp or a crimp tool for these. Also, it's just a one and done deal, and we give that to you also just so you have some adjustment to make if you need to. I can always cut these and just crimp them on again. So you will be using a U-bolt for this top piece, crimping this together. So if you see me doing that, that's why. But I'm going to get my stainless screws. And I believe this is the right. Found my wrench here. So these do have to sit. I'm pretty sure we've gone over this a handful of times in our videos, but these do have to go in like this. Doesn't matter top or bottom, but they do have to go in like this. Reason being is these nuts will touch each other and you won't be able to tighten them down, so that is why. So I'm just going to start from the top here. Just a note, just to make your life a little easier too. If you see, you can't really see on this one, sometimes, depending on the adjustment, you'll be able to get an Allen underneath here. So I'm going to do it on the bottom side. I'm going to put this one on the bottom because I can easily get an Allen to go down there, and I can just hold the wrench on the back side here to tighten that down. So I like to put the top one facing out and the bottom one facing in, just because normally the adjustment, normally it just fits in better that way. So I'm gonna get the wrench here, back side, tighten that down. Alright, so now we got that tightened down. We're gonna move on to crimping this. And just open the door here. The biggest thing you want to prevent is this rattling around, so you want to make it so that there's always tension on it so it stays tight and latched down. But you also don't want to make sure it's too tight to where this is going to make it really hard for your door to actually latch shut because you have this pulled up too high. So get this in here. Thread it through. If you have a U-bolt, you don't have to unthread the little nuts on there. You don't have to unthread them all the way. You can just open it up a little bit, slide it through, so you're not having to spend time trying to re-thread it all the way back down, because those threads are kind of long. Which normally we recommend cutting those threads down. So you can see there's a little bit of here before it actually touches the latch. We want to try to get a good medium to where it's going to be sitting a little tight, but not too tight to where it's going to unlatch on its own. We also want to make sure that there's tension on here, like I said before. So get that a little tight there. Let's see, that's a little too tight. So we'll go down a little bit. Looks like right there. So getting that crimp tool. Obviously at this point you'll get your wrench and you'll start to tighten those little nuts down. Do this one handed here. Then I'm just going to use my cables. Snip the cable, or you can use a little cutoff wheel to cut that. There you go. So not really rattling or anything like that. Just like that. And you'll do the same thing for all four of them. So we're not going to put the door skins on yet. We're going to wait until we get the windows on, because it's a lot easier to work with this open space down here. I like to put little clips down here to hold the window in place so it doesn't shift around when I'm trying to line stuff up. This does have an audio roof, and these do overhang a little bit normally from the way our windows are cut out, so we're probably going to have to take away a little bit off the top here. Not a big deal. I'll be swapping these out with stainless screws now, and we're going to be using those stainless screws for getting these holes preset on the windows, and I will show you guys how we do that. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to put the window frames on. This makes it a lot easier for fitting the windows. So we got our passenger side window here. You see the spacers are going to be facing outward. That leaves that 1/8 inch gap for the window to sit between the door frame and the window frame. So you'll get a bag that says lower door or lower window, and you're going to be using the longer ones. These are 5/8, and then there's 1/2 inch for the rest of them. So we're going to use these ones first to actually mount the frames from here to here first. Okay. Okay. So another thing too is, if you have the BRP style mirrors that fold up and that go along the side here, you're going to want to get these tabs. These are so you can mount, you're going to actually take the mirrors off and you're going to mount them to these from now on. We do have a slot here for adjustment, so you can tilt the frames a little bit. And there's also a center hole here, so if you have any aftermarket mirrors, you can also bolt them to this hole right here, because a lot of them are this size. I need those aftermarket ones, the whole size of this, or you can just open it up if the bolt hole is a little bigger to bolt your aftermarket mirrors too. Check that clearance there. Okay. So another thing too is we're going to want to look forward. I'm going to show you this now so it's easy to see. Is we're going to want this frame. Basically, we're going to want this even gap here. This is important, and then another thing that's important is this gap here. Sometimes the frame will sit down a little bit, just depending on how the chassis and everything fits. So when you're trying to fit the frame in here, you get that lined up there. And normally what I like to do, the first hole that I drill out on this whole frame here to the polycarbonate will be this top corner one. Just because that one is that top corner hole is gonna help hold this parallel here, and then I can also start working from here. So we can lift the center here. You can see that front part. This will start to lift a little bit. So this hole first, and then what we'll do is we'll lift the center here, and it'll lift that gap a little bit to make that even gap here. We've got our window here. This person doesn't have a light bar or anything like that, so if you have a light bar cut out, basically what it is we will trim out this section here to leave that clearance spot so that your light bar bracket that mounts up here can clear that. And if you have a BRP windshield, this is a aftermarket one. I'm not sure what brand this is, but you can see it's just flat here, so you won't mark anything down. You'll say, because we have two options on our website, whether you have a BRP windshield or not, you'll select from those two. This is not a BRP windshield, so you will select no, I do not have a BRP windshield for that. This is aftermarket, so there's so many out there that we can only account for to recut for. So we will trim this according to how this window is, without taking away. Because what we do for the BRP one is we basically just cut a section out here for our BRP style windshields. So we've got it lined up there. We've got these slots here that lined up. So I'm going to use my little clips here. And I'm going to use these to hold them in place while I check fitment. Okay. Okay. And we're flush here along the bottom of the frame. Actually go down just a smidge more. Nice and flat along the bottom here. Then we want to check this gap here. This is important to make sure you have, because when you try to open the door and that plastic rubs on there, you're gonna start to scratch up this. So we gotta make sure that clears there, and we're looking pretty good. This gap is nice and even all the way down. This gap here. You want to make sure that it's not overlapping this quarter rod here, because your middle quarter window is going to mount up here, and you want to make sure that this isn't overlapping that. So, okay. Alright, so I did that Sharpie mark there, and basically what that was, so I can just drill it, and I don't have to worry about the frame shifting. I know that it's centered with a hole there, so I just ran a drill bit through there. And now I can put a Cleco in there, and let's already grab that. Just grab my Cleco tool here. So now it's not going to shift on us, it's going to stay where it's at. So now we're going to worry about this one here. You can see the gap here, the line here is a little different, so what we can do is we can shift that up so it's nice and flush there. And this one we don't really need to mark anything, we can just drill it where it's at. So I'll just lift the frame up a little bit, and we'll drill that hole in there. Get good. Okay. And we get our Cleco here. Clip that in. Now at this point you can just drill them all in. You don't really need anything special, hold them in place. These two are the most important parts to get actually like held down, so you can do the rest of them. So, all right. So next thing we're doing is the quarter window here, and you see this little tab here, that is to fit in the plastic here. You might have to take away a little bit to make that to fit better in there. What I normally like to do is I will take away a little bit here before I take any from the top here, just so that this sits nice and flush in here along this plastic here. You don't want any gaps, you want to try to avoid as much gaps as possible. So open the door here to make it easier to install, just to check, make sure that lines up. Just lock that in there. We'll fold this down a little bit. So this isn't a big deal if it's overlapping, because this doesn't move at all, so I actually like to try to keep this underneath a little bit, just helps with sealing and all that. So try to get this just to fit nicely in there. Looks like I might have to take a little more off of there. And also you can see we want that to line up there as well. So we don't want this to overlap. This is important because you want the this window, you want this to basically rest against the edge of the frame. If you have this sit too low, that window is not going to rest against the frame, and you're going to have a gap there. You're going to have the window is going to rattle. So we want this up just a little bit, if not on the edge. Kind of want to split the difference on the center line of the cage bar here between the rear window and the quarter window, so you can get them to both sit against the frame properly. Much better now. It's actually sitting flat in there. You see how it's not overhanging on this plastic here. It's actually sitting flush. So now that we have the window fit and preset, we're going to use that screw in the quarter rod there to preset the first hole, and then we're going to do the rest of them. So get my mallet here. Make sure that we're fit nicely. I'm going to tap that first. Mallet. Okay. Pop that out there. You can see we got that first hole there. So I'll get my drill bit. Pop that first hole in. And we'll take that screw out. We got a nice gap still there. We're so good here. Okay. So next thing we want to do is we're going to want to disperse the riv nuts that we give you guys for that middle quarter. So I have a template here. I can show you how we disperse them. That's the full one. Let's see. These are our templates here for in-shop installations. So we've got multiple holes here dispersed around it. So these are the ones going down quarter rod you'll do. Normally you do these ones from the inside. After you get these ones all finished, you'll actually do the quarter rod ones besides this top ones. That's where you start. So I like to do these ones first and then do these ones. I like to do these ones first just so if I can still maybe shift it just a smidge around to make sure I got that center line here. I'll do those first too. So I will try to do even gaps around the whole thing. So you can see, I actually will, what I'll do to make the job a little easier here. Just to make my life a little easier here. And you can just disperse these evenly, center, 2 on the side, 1 up top, and then you can do 1. Just want to make sure that's on the bar. You can pre-mark it on the bar itself to help you find a good center line there. Okay, and then do this one right here. Pull this back off. I'm going to drill those holes out, and then I will mark with a silver Sharpie. I'll mark a hole through this to the cage, and then I will drill holes in the cage, and we'll put the rib nuts in, and then we can tighten it down. Alright, so I just drilled all the holes that I marked out, and we'll put this back in here. I'll use my silver Sharpie to mark those holes in the cage. I'm using a silver Sharpie to mark these. Put that screw back in there. Actually, I'll use this thumb screw since it's coming right out. This one's a little better here. Okay. That one. So I can get this one in there. You can just run a drill bit through here. You just don't want to do that to prevent the drill bit shifting off the center line of the cage and ending out egging the holes, and then we'll have a big problem there. That scratched hole there. Okay. So I'm going to use, so my drill bit doesn't walk off the center line of the bar, I'm going to use one of these here. Put it in the center of my dots. If you're careful enough, you don't need to do this. I like to do this just to be safe. So smallest drill bit there. We're gonna very carefully. So this is the air tool that we use here for installing rib nuts. It's a little faster and easier than the little one we did you guys. So this is also way more expensive, so unless you're willing to spend that kind of money, go for it. But we do offer a small rib nut kit that you can use on our website. Alright, so we're going to use, this is the tool we give you, and then we give you the 1964 drill bit. And the wrench you're going to need for this tool is a 9/16, and we're just going to use it on this one right here. So I'll get my 9/16 drill bit, or wrench, and tighten it down. Just careful not to strip it out, over tighten it. Just a little too much there. Okay. You don't have to go crazy tightening these down, but if you go too loose, it will start spinning. So just make sure you've got a decent amount of tension on there. Looks like we're pretty good there. Just unthread that. And that's how you use the tool. Alright, we got a minimum quarter window here. And we'll use these. Just need 1/2 inch. We'll use some 3/8. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right now. Since there's no sandwiching, you only need 3/8 for these ones. So we'll do that first one here, the 1/2 inch. Get that first quarter window. Screw it in, the quarter rod. Also, what you can do, since this window doesn't really move or anything like that, you can remove this side of the film. Since this is not moving or anything like that, it's not really a big deal. Drop in there, just want to double check to make sure it's still fit nicely and everything's lining up. So, make sure all of our holes are good and clean, no edges, no frays. And I like to do this step by step, and so we're trying to avoid as much fingerprints as possible. So at this point, I'm not going to put my finger anywhere on this side of it. And keep my hands holding it on the sides nicely to avoid that fingerprint and get any fingerprints on there. Alright. And we can install this one for good. I would not tighten these down all the way because you're going to want to peel this back, and if you tighten these down with the film on it, you're going to get the film stuck between the two, and you'll see that. So just don't tighten them down all the way until it's all finished and you're ready to peel this off, but you can at least get it decently tight. There we go. Just gonna leave a little bit of a gap in there still. It's just enough to hold it in place. And we'll do the rest of them. Okay, now we will drill the holes through the back side. Don't have to worry about putting screws in there yet. So now we can start on the quarter window. So I'll get the frame, I'll put the frame in there first. I just wanted to show this start before I got a little crazy, but drop the window in here. So, a few things that we need to do to make this fit right. As you can see, it sits nicely parallel in there. I do need to take a little bit off top here, so I just got some yellow tape, just because yellow tape's straight across. So I'm going to shear that with the shear that we have here, and I also need to take away some here and some here, but I'm going to start here first. So I got a Sharpie. Basically what I did is I got the point right there and just drew an even line up. So I'm going to shear this off, I'm going to shear that off, and then I'm going to trim this away so that it clears this this piece of the cage right here. Much better. Way better. Also, this weld here, we want to try to stay below that, just so we get a good flat seal across there. And looks like we're good there, good there. So now we can start actually mounting it onto the door frame. So same thing with how I did the bottom flange down there. I'm gonna put some screws in along the bottom, and then we'll tap it with a mallet. All right. So what you're gonna want to do is you're gonna have a Torx screw here. You're gonna have a Torx screw here as well. I just have a nut in there just to hold that in place for the moment. But you're gonna remove this because you're gonna want to get back here to put a rib nut in. You're gonna put a rib nut here, and you're gonna put one rib nut here, as I talked before about that one. We're gonna do this one right now. All right. There we go. You can see this rivet here is going to actually press and be in the way of your window sitting flat here. So what we like to do is we'll drill this one out, just so it's not blocking the window from sealing tightly. Well, now that we've got our rivets put in here, we're going to put screws in these, set it in there. Make sure that it sits nicely up against here too, if you need to sand some away to shift it down. Also, so you get a good seal here as well. Here. And I'm gonna get my mallet, and this one you just have to hold in place. Or what you can do to make your life a little easier, you can grab some masking tape. You can do this to keep it from sliding on you too. Line it up, make sure it's sitting flush there. And you can put some masking tape there. I'll keep it from sliding around so much on you. So we'll do our mallet. Tap that with the mallet. Get our hole now. Use our drill bit. Get a 1/2 inch. Pop this screw in. Where we're going to start. I'll double check where our screws are at when we tap it. Now we're going to put this one back in up top. We're going to put those other screws in, and then we're going to do the quarter rod screws next. So we'll do this one first. Then it does have a this customer does have attachments on the back, so make it a little easier to get back here. I'm just gonna put an extension on the back. Tighten this down. Now we can actually get to tightening down everything. I'm gonna tighten up the middle window. Do the same thing I did for the outside of this. Peel it back and tighten it all down. We've got the quarter window, middle quarter window done. Now we're going to do the front window. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to do these two front corners. for mounting, and then we'll fill in all the other ones. So you have two different sizes here for the 4-seaters. You've got a front, and you've got a rear. Front is a 3-inch, rear is a 4-inch. Also, we have these front latches. That's going to go here. You're going to get a little tab that screws in here. This is for the front window. And then for the rear, when we'll get to that, is you'll get a rib nut. You're going to put a rib nut in here, and you're going to put the latch, twist tie latch here. Just going to peel this away as I go. So we got a 1/2 inch. Got our twist tie here. Now we put the latch in there. So we're going to peel away just past the bar. So we're trying to keep as much plastic to stay on there as possible to avoid fingerprints. Get our 3-inch. That L bracket keeps your window tight against the other frame. You can shut your door. See, keeps it tight, nice and flush. So now we're gonna do all these ones. Peel this away now. So you don't want to go crazy tight on these, just because it'll start to pull your plastic in. You'll start to see a bunch of divots where the screws are at, and also if your windshield or if your windows start to get hot in the summertime, this plastic expands a little bit, and you can actually run into the problem of cracking your plastics because you over tighten them. So you just don't want to go crazy when you tighten these down. Now what we're going to do is we're going to loosen these. Pull this back a little bit. You don't have to pull the whole thing off. We're just going to pull it back a little bit, and we're going to peel plastic away from between this door here. So pulling these screws out in the middle here, and then I'm going to do, I'm going to pull the window all the way off. But we're going to take this side out. You leave that screw in there. It's just an easy way of doing it. You can peel this away because you're going to need to put this back up against the bottom. And when we get to the end here, I'll unscrew that side, peel it away, and then we can screw it all back down. Ooh, screw this back in. Screw the front side away. So keep the outside one on for now until I actually get it all finished. Like I say, we're looking pretty good. So get this one done, and basically we'll be good on this side, and then I can just do the other side, and this will be finished. So I'm gonna do that rib nut now. Get my 9/16 drill bit and put that rib nut in there. Okay, get a rib nut tool. Go inside here. We got that hole drilled out. Now we're going to put the latches on. So we'll put the front and rear latch in. I always go on top of the washer just so it doesn't look goofy. You see that it fits nicely like that. So if you go the other way, it looks kind of goofy. You won't get as much area for the hook to grab the twist tie. Just finger tighten that back on there. Then make sure it's facing up. Pull this up. ties out of the way. This one. This one you're gonna have it facing at 90. I'm basically gonna have the twist tie here, and it's gonna reach out and twist around this part. But right now we're gonna do these. So let's loosen up that plastic now before we get them all screwed in. Alright. Drop that back in. We can actually tighten this down and leave this in there for good after we do this.